who's going to introduce our guest speaker,
And it is.
Mr. Ian Armstrong. Thanks, gentlemen.
Ian Armstrong, OAM, FRVAHJ. Victorian of the Year in 1988. Patron of the Victorian Antique Dealers Guild. Provost Order of St Michael. Order of St Lazarus of Jerusalem. Highly respected value of the museum collection and other collectibles. In Australia's bicentenary year, as I mentioned, he was recognised Victorian of the Year. In 1990, he received the Medal of the Order of Australia for his significant contribution to Australian culture and heritage. Ian is the owner of the Armstrong Collection. It's absolutely mind-boggling what he owns, and he's only brought a small lot here today, which Ian believes to be the second largest in the world, including a huge number of treasures, including the Charlotte Medal created by a convict in 1788 outside Botany Bay, and thousands of significant artefacts. Ian has brought a selection with him today. Would you welcome Ian Armstrong, OAM JP.
Thanks so much, Roger. I'm really just the little boy collector who never grew up, but somehow a few things have come along the way. But when all my friends were going on to uni and doing amazing things, I was still collecting and collecting and collecting, and it has led to a very interesting life. My dear old dad, who died at 100, was the founder of the Probus Club in Mount Eliza, and my mum similarly with the ladies club down there, so I know a little bit about Probus. And he used to stand at his club, the Naval and Military, and they'd all be proud of their sons. What's your son do? Oh, he's a judge. He's an actuary. And what does your son do, Max? And my dad would look at the ground sheepishly and go, "Oh, he collects." So, dear old dad, when the mention of the Order of Australia, I was one of the younger ones. I took my dad along. They all shook his hand and not mine. But Dad was away for 6 years, a great king and country man. During the war, he was number 108 for Victoria, VX 108, and I didn't know him till he got back in 46. He'd been up in New Guinea, the Western Desert, Ceylon, Palestine, all over the place. And I said to my mum, "Who's that man?" Anyway, dear old Dad took me down to the Woolen toy shop, and there was a racing car about this long, wind up, and he bought it for me, and we went outside, we wound it up, and the spring broke. Oh, and there was no consumer affairs in those days, so we were stuck with a broken spring car. Then the kids all in the 1940s all wanted to play spacemen with fish tanks on their head and all that, and my mum said, no, none of that, no, it's all fantasy, it'll never happen. Within 20 years, our namesake Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, so dear old mum was a little bit wrong with that one. I think we all collected dinky toys, some of us cigarette cards. My grandfather, Les Armstrong, who started our shoe shop 80 years before I closed it down. This was his Ogden's cigarette card collection. And he had a stroke in 1950, and on his deathbed he said to my dear grandson Ian, with the hope that he will cherish in the years that lie ahead, looking through this album as much as I did 35 years ago. And here are all the Boer War leaders and the Tsarina and all sorts of wonderful things. So I did actually go on and collect cigarette cards, and I got 500,000 of them. And we bought a house in Mornington, and the interest rate was 17.5% of the bank, unlike today, 4% roundabout. And Rick Mellon really wanted to buy my cigarette card collection. You probably know Rick, the valuer on 3AW and other places. And he said, "I'll buy you cigarette cards." So he bought his van, and my wife joyfully filled his van up because she wanted to see the end of them, get her house back. And I sold 500,000 to Rick Mellon. He employed an invalid man to count them. I thought I had 500,000. And after 3 months he said, "You know how many you had?" I said, "No." He said, "You had 486,000, and Rick let me keep some of my favourite collections." So I did have roughly 500,000. And like all collectors, you tend to go on and collect again. So I've gone on and collected a few. And I was just talking with Mike Brady's son, at the West Brighton Club the other night where I happened to be a guest. And as you know, Mike Brady sings Up There Kazali, and his son is a very talented young man in his mid to late 20s. He draws ships, so he and I are communicating, and I'm lending him some of my ship cards, and I hope that'll help him. So we've got a camaraderie going on there. We used to collect silkworms and watch the cycle of life going on, and I had so many silkworms I used to supply the education department of Victoria with silkworms for all their schools. And one of my friends was Andrew Campbell, and we were little 5, 6-year-old boys, and he said, oh look, the male joins with the female, and he said, oh, I don't think they've been together long enough, that one's not paralysed. Andrew Campbell went on to be the lead hospital doctor up in New South Wales, a very highly regarded medico, so that was one of his early goofs. I love collecting coins, and there was a fellow who had a great influence on my life. Some of you will know this book. A lot of us were brought up on those, and when the family closed the company down, there were Cole Stoney Picture Book number 1, number 2, number 3, and the great-grandchildren and grandchildren did number 4. And they closed the company up, it wasn't selling enough copies, and they rang me and said, you know, you show great interest in Coles and we're about to dump everything, and if you want to come round, you can have it all. I took the van around and loaded up, and I'm now the controller of all the ready-to-print E.W. Cole material that ever went. What fascinated me was this large series of little tokens. They're like the old pennies. You remember the big pennies that we used to have? Well, Cole copied the idea of the English tokens, the Gold Rush tokens, and he used to give these out to his customers, and they were worth 6 easy writing pens and a couple of pencils if you cashed them in. And he had a lot of them gold plated, and he used to roll them down the Burke Street and in the lanes, and these urchins would all rush to pick them up, and he'd get them to come into his shop. And we had a shoe shop that I mentioned earlier. My grandfather started in 1911. My dad bought it when he came back from the war in 1946 and carried it on. Dad got to retirement age, and guess who bought the shoe shop from the old man? So we had 80 years running a shoe shop. And I thought, I'm going to get bored in these 4 walls fitting school shoes, you know, like McKenna's did up here in Black Rock, and we're friendly with Frank McKenna and their larger family. Anyway, I thought I'll go on with my collecting, and I'll go to the antique fairs, and turns out while I was still a shoe retailer, I was made patron of the Antique Dealers Guild, which is quite strange. But the big thing about that was, I said, Cole had so much fun and success with issuing his 82 different tokens and all the little messages they used to say, and they'd become a collector series. I said, why don't we, as Little Armstrong Shoemart down in Frankston, why don't we issue some of these? So I went to Stokes, who made the Gold Rush ones and the Coles ones, and they made me a couple. And I'll give a couple of these out if any of you answer questions well. So yes, we did, and we had a bit of fun. Then we started to get a bit cheekier. And the Olympic Games was coming up in 1984, and they wouldn't give me permission, or they wanted to charge me 12.5% royalty for using the Olympic Games logo. So I got Olympic Willie, and I made it his sister Olympic Penny over the top. And Mark Kerr rang me from the Olympic Federation and said, you're infringing our copyright. And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, yes, you are. I've got one in front of me. And I said, well, what's it say? He said, Olympic Penny. I said, yes, well, that's his sister. And he said, anyway, how much are you charging? And I said, 0. We give them free to our customers. He said, oh, 12.5% of 0. That didn't get me very far, so he hung off the line. We had other funny ones. I thought, well, no one's ever done an elliptical token. And Halley's Comet was coming back in 1986, I think it was. So we did the world's first elliptical token. And that made world coin magazines, at least, not world headlines. But I made it that it was limited, because everyone likes to collect a limited edition. So we limited it to 1,000. And I said, they're worth $100 each. Oh, my solicitor said, $100 each, you're up for $100,000. I said, yes, but it's when the token returns in 2064. Anyway, they still said, look, you're leaving your family with a big liability. So John Gilmore, who some of you will know, used to be head of the Over 50s Friendly Society, he backed a policy to cover the payout in 2064. And it's on track to return at 3 times what's needed. So that was rather nice. We had some fun with the Royals. During the bicentenary year, Prince Charles actually was there with Diana, presented the Victorian of the Year. And he said, is Ian Armstrong in the room? So of course he was. And they came over at 9:23 precisely for Petty Fours. My dear wife decided that it was the big royal occasion that she should wear one of the Georgian shoe buckles that we collected from the shoe trade. Not as big as that one, but she put them on the front of her evening shoes. And we looked under the table just before the royals came, and one was missing. Well, what do? Do you go grovelling around the table with the royals coming over, or do you just sort of grin and bear it and look for it later, which we did. We eventually found it on the dining room floor. As we'd left home, it had fallen off. But anyway, the Australian band struck up, waltzing Matilda and all that, and a royal waltz. It was like a wedding ceremony with the bride and groom, and Prince Charles asked my wife Mary to dance. I was stuck with Diana. What do you do? Anyway, Diana and I and Charles and Mary and Charles were, and everybody got up from their tables. They were all coming closer and closer, and she said, Diana, I'm not allowed to report too much, but Diana, Princess Diana, said to me, if they get any closer, kick them in the shins. And perhaps I can tell you the next one, because she had lovely hairdo. She had a strapless, not a topless dress, as I should have, a strapless dress. There was a little bit of this going on, and I'm dancing. She had $10 million worth of jewellery on. Big thing, nearly the size of a matchbox. It was a sapphire, blue sapphire. And I said, Your Highness, I'm a collector, and I'd love to know what the origin of that lovely necklace is. Did it come out of the hilt of the Black Prince's sword or something like that? No, she said it was a present to us from King Fahd of Saudi Arabia, and on our wedding anniversary. And she went, bang, not a bad wedding present, what? Bang, oh, no. She nearly winded me with the thing in the ribs. Anyway, lovely time with her. Now the Queen came for the bicentenary of Australia, and I thought, well, the little Armstrong shoe mart down there in Frankston, we should commemorate the bicentenary. So I wrote to the authority with my Olympic experience and said, could we have permission to use the logo? Well, they didn't answer the letter. They were all out to fancy lunches. Second letter, third letter, fourth letter, still no answer. So I thought, well, I gave them the ultimatum. I'll boycott your bicentenary. And being a bit of a historian, I worked out that William Dampier had landed exactly 100 years earlier on Australian soils in 1688, not 1788 when the first fleet was here. So I commemorated the tricentenary of Australia. And I asked my Dysinger to make a solid gold one, and he did. And I said, I'd like to give that to the Queen. Well, I got on to the protocol people, and they said, oh, well, you must present yourself at Government House, loosely wrap it with a one-page letter about what it's all about. And the very next day, I got a letter from the Queen, not only thanking me for the gift, but complimenting us on linking the bicentenary with the tricentenary. And a copy of that letter was duly sent to the Bicentenary Authority, which embarrassed them muchly, and they sent a reply saying, good luck with your projects. Now, it was mentioned the Charlotte Medal. There was an advanced collector who I used to revere, and he had bought the copper Charlotte Medal at an auction at Sotheby's, and he wanted to buy his freehold. I think freeholds come a lot into this. You need the money, rates are high at the bank, so you sell something off. Anyway, he flicked it over to me in a little plastic bank bag, and he said, you've got 3 months to pay, I need the money, And it's yours, you know, I trust you for 3 months and it's yours if you come up with it. Well, I didn't go out, and I bought the Charlotte medal, the copper one. The silver one sold, and I had to be the advanced valuer on it, under the hammer at $750 plus buyer's premium, which made it about $968,000, and not far short of $1 million. And the copper one we owned, and it wasn't as pretty as the other one, but anyway, we had it for 30 years, took it around a lot of talks like this, and I'll pass this around, by the way, and you can have a look. And that's what a convict scratched on board the ship Charlotte. That's why it's called the Charlotte Medal, one of the first fleet ships, and he commemorated the entire voyage, and he dated it 20th of January 1788, which was 6 days before we celebrate Australia Day on the 26th, because they originally landed at Botany Bay, found it was no good, went round into Sydney Harbour, and the rest is history. What you are looking at there is a very handsome replica of the one that we moved on to the National Gallery, National Museum, and that helped buy our house in Brighton, might I tell you. So collecting does have its advantages sometimes, as I've mentioned 2 of them already. Back onto these little tokens, Cole issued 82, and I kept issuing and having fun with more and more different ones, and our series is 368 different. And someone says, oh, I've got one, don't give me another one, I've already got one. I said, the chances of you having the one I'm giving you now are pretty slim, because when we got into the Guinness Book of Records, they said yours is the largest private issue in the world, including the Greeks and Romans. I thought, well, that's not bad for a little shoe shop in Frankston. But funnily enough, back in '85, BHP was celebrating its centenary. They started in 1885, and they were giving awards out, awards for excellence in the arts and in all sorts of fields. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice for Armstrong Shoe Mart in Frankston, the little suburban family shoe shop, to award BHP the Armstrong Shoe Mart Award for Excellence. So we duly sent a letter up, and I got a nice reply. Sir James Balderston, my fellow directors and I were thrilled to receive the award. Now, let's talk about another area of collecting. When you're in shoes and you're going bored for the rest of your life, fitting school shoes and gumboots and things, you've got to do something outside, like play tennis, and I went on to collecting. And I collected 500 shoe horns with the names of the retailers on them, all the button-up boot hooks, 750 examples of historic shoes, advertising, shoe polish tins, and it started to get a bit boring. When things turn up, I said, oh, I already got that, I don't need that, got a better one than that. And you think, and I went to Adelaide with my dear old dad, and there was 5 little single shoe buckles, just like this. And I thought, aren't they amazing? And they said, oh, there's hallmarks on them. If any of you collect silver, you know that you can look up these little marks, and you actually can tell who made it, what street he was in, who he succeeded, what year, and the purity of the metal, which in the case of sterling silver is 92.5% pure silver. I thought, well, this is really interesting. So I went on and collected 300 of these shoe buckles, all before White Australia was founded. You know, the average date is 1780. Fascinating. And people would say, oh, 300, you've got the largest collection in the world. They've got 5 in the National Gallery. Mrs. Barter in Toronto, Canada's got 9. And the Shoe Museum in Northampton in England has got about a couple of hundred. Anyway, I had a rival in Sydney. Every time I go to Sydney, I'd say, any shoe buckles round the trade? And they, oh, no, there's a lady called Sybil. Whenever we get one, we save it for Sybil. Oh, dear. Anyway, Sybil came down to see an exhibition of mine at McClellan Gallery, and I was very honoured about that. And 20 years on, last year, I decided to ring Sybil, see if she's still with us. And I rang Sybil, and she, yes, I'm still here, I'm 91. I've gone blind, and it's time to sell. Oh, guess he was up in Sydney with his boxes and his checkbook. And I had 300. I think, oh, you know, I'm the king of shoe buckles in the world. Well, I wasn't. She had 2,000 and a few more because she had the breecher buckles and there was things called stocks that went round your neck like a horse rider's in the old days, like a big cravat, and they would fasten with a buckle at the back, and they go along with shoe buckles. I had 8 of those. She had 54, and so I now have 62 or something like that. Well, how do you buy them? Because I had paid $5,000 for one pair, and I'm thinking, that was a pretty good pair, mind you, and it had the matching buckles. It was in the original Georgian box, and it had the original receipt with it from 1750, so it was a pretty good one. So they're sort of worth about 500 to 1,000 each, and she had 2,000 plus. And you go up there and say, oh, I'd love to own those. But how does somebody like us buy it? Anyway, we came to an arrangement, and we paid their medical donations and all sorts of things, and I said, how about I give you a cheque, you have the kudos of presenting the cheque to the Western Sydney University for medical research, and you give me the receipt. And it worked out quite nicely. And this year, with all this stuff going on with franking credits and everything like you're probably mostly involved with, things like that do tend to help a little bit when the tax time comes around. Anyway. Oh dear. We're going all right for time. I do have some mystery objects. I'm going to pass 4 of them round, 2 this side, 2 that side. If any of you can guess what they are, you win a prize. And the prize is one of these books, People's Paraphernalia, which has my grandfather on the front, some of the Armstrong tokens there, and in the middle pages it's got something about our collection. So, Rick Mill did the book, I didn't actually do it, but I'll pass those around now, and 2 on this side, as long as we get them back. That's what they are, and 2 more on this side, and these have been on national television. No one in Australia could get it, so you have some smart people here, and some of you might be able to guess. Now you might wonder what I have here. This has come out of the National Sporting Museum where the Armstrong collection has lent it. We all know the Melbourne Cup. The Melbourne Cup started in 1861. This is the Melbourne Cup in 1857. Raced for by the fastest horse in the colony of Victoria, and 1857, 4 years before it was called the Melbourne Cup, and it was won by Cardinal Wiseman. Cardinal Wiseman, the jockey was Redfern, and the owner was Mr. Warby, after whom the Warby Ranges are named, up in northern Victoria where Ned Kelly roamed in the olden days of the 1870s. So quite an historic piece, and we're very, very honoured to own this and be able to lend it out to, I think it's been to the VRC and the Australian Racing Museum. We're going all right for time. My grandfather loved old Melbourne, had a shoe shop in Collins Street and did very well. In Collins Street he sold a lot of big oversized red shoes. They were to the transvestites and prostitutes of the old days. But he made so much money and things were roaring in the 1920s. And in 1928 he said, I'm taking the family round the world. Well, that was a pretty big thing to do. They had the best ships and they flew in one of the first passenger aeroplanes, London to Paris. They went on the Berengaria across. He wrote a diary, which I happen to have in the collection and is rather interesting. But he loved the old cable trams, and when they finished, he went along to the auction and he bought one of these. It's like a little computer, developed in 1875 and used on every cable tram, and it counts the number of clicks. It's got a combination lock here. The ticket goes in there, and there were juniors, seniors, and full round trip and all that, and they each had a different colour. At the end of the day, the top comes off when you work the combination, and the controller would count the in the yard to match that up with the money in the bag. So it was a way of keeping the conductor honest. And that's how it went. Ding, ding, ding. And that's the cable tram clipper. So you're welcome to come and have a look at that. And that's cable trams in Melbourne. There was no motor in the cable tram, hence the word cable. My great-grandfather on my mum's side built the winding machine. They're big steam engines in houses, and they rotated and pulled the cable right round in this trench. And the grip man would grip onto the cable, and that would lurch the cable tram forward. And it was their way of motivation. We're very proud of Grandpa, who built that. It was called the Australotus Engineering Company. Otis being lifts. Unfortunately, we sold the lift division off, but I happen to have the contract with Mr. Otis of New York, dated 1887, where great-grandpa, who was a founder of the RACV, signed up to get the official franchise to sell the lifts. We're also proud of great-grandpa and grandpa because they turned Smelbourne into Melbourne. For hundreds of years, there was no proper sewerage, and Melbourne grew so quickly and had no way really of getting rid of sewage, just the streets and the drains and run into the Yarra, and Melbourne was actually called Smelbourne. And great-grandfather built those big steam engines 3 times as high as the ceiling here over at Spotswood, the pumping house, and that pumped the sewage of Melbourne down to Werribee. So we pat him on the back for that. We think that was rather good. Now, as a collector, you love to get into things that are a little bit different. I admired Sir David Attenborough, all the wonderful things that he does, and you've seen the Blue Planet and Blue Planet 2 and everything. Many years ago, he was on the sands of Madagascar, on the shores, and he found all these eggshell, big sections of eggshell, and he started gluing them together. And he glued together a complete egg. Turns out this was the egg of the giant elephant bird, which was bombed on the head and killed by explorers and people, mainly for the egg, and they were extinct around 1700. And Attenborough had put his together, took it back to London, had it properly done. Then he took it to the radiocarbon people to have it dated. And they dated his. They said, we've done about 12 of these. Yours is 750 AD. And the Armstrong collection has acquired an equivalent one to Sir David's, and all of the others range between 700 and 900 AD. So I can fairly confidently say mine is around about 800 years after Christ, so about 1200 and more years old. So it's a fascinating exhibit when you have young people come by to show them something. How big is it? It's bigger than a football. It's the shape of a normal egg, approaching a basketball size, enormous. And it is the biggest egg ever laid on the planet, including the dinosaurs, because their eggs were surprisingly small. Surprisingly small. Now, we're going to have a few questions in a while. I'll just tell you about some books. When you get into collecting, you need to get references and reference books, and of course I've become a bibliophile, and I start to like old books, and they say, oh, what's your oldest book? And I say, oh, well, I've got the Gutenberg Bible, 1453. The next one I've got is called the Nuremberg Chronicle, which was printed 1 year after Columbus sailed the Ocean Blue in 1492. Mine's dated 1493, and it's the original. And who worked on that but Albrecht Dürer, the famous artist, AD, you know, A and the D inside it. Every art student starts off with probably Albrecht Dürer and goes through the Renaissance and everything else. So to have things like that are just fascinating. So one of my book dealers said, look, I've got from Europe on consignment a prayer book that looks like this. And it's all the formalities of the prayers that they went for in the convents. And he said, it's yours. It's early, you know, Renaissance art, and it's 1490, and not the dollars. That was the year. And 1490, I thought I'd love to own it, absolutely love to own it. But my special price as a dealer was 130,000. And I thought, oh look, no. And I combed the internet and everything, and I found a lady called a polymath in country New South Wales. She's done everything. She's a computer programmer, an artist, a gardener, a pet person, and she's gone into reproducing 15th century manuscripts. And she said, yeah, I'll send you one down. So she sends me down a copy of the King of France's prayer book. And that's, dates in here, 1470. And she's hand-bound it, hand gold-tooled it and everything else. You're welcome to have a look later, but absolutely. And I said, look, I'm going to be your best customer. I want another one and another one. I've now got a library of her books. I rang her the other day and she said, look, I've gone through that phase of my life and I'm tapering right down, so I mightn't be getting many more. She did make me this one. Oh, this is a Bible. Leather. I provided the leather, and I said, oh, I'm sick of dark brown. She said, oh no, I dye leathers. Yeah, I'll change the colour of the leather, no worries. This is the Borso d'Este, a famous Italian, and the Italians were extremely good in those early days. Famous Italian Bible, and she's done that for me and charged me very little, but you're welcome to have a look at that. And she said, oh, the old print was a bit unreadable, so I got the hypertext of the King James Version, and I inserted that. All these big letters, you know, when you get the start of a thing, you get a lovely big letter. And so she copied the original big letter and then put the words after that. Done a marvellous job, and so I'm very happy with my collection, and I saved 100,000 and more. And it can be so much fun, all of this. Now, what else have I got at the front? Oh, collectors always like to have a find, you know, and I go to the Camberwell Market every Sunday, and one of the early ones, and I've been going for 40 years, it's run by Rotary, and I found this, I framed it myself, but I found it in a whole lot of old music, and it was $10, so I paid the $10, because when you realise who it is, it's William Hogarth, 1751, original, one of a series of 4, and it's pretty gruesome. There's some dead wife and wigless fellows and all that. He did Gin Lane and The Industrious Apprentice and The Idle Apprentice and The Industrious Apprentice, all that sort of thing. But for $10 for something that's worth a couple of thousand, it's not bad, and it sort of pays for your petrol money when you do go to Camberwell. Put that back. What else? There's a couple of others that I brought along because I ran out the door. This one. Oh, sorry. These are so small it'd be hard to see them, but I happen to know that George Baxter was the first colour printer in the world. They did etching, black and white, everything was black and white. George Baxter invented the lithographic colour printing in 1850. And, you know, being a lender to the Racing Museum, there's a racing scene there, there's a haymaking scene there, tiny little things the size of a matchbox, but they're historically and culturally significant. This is the first colour printing in the world, 1850. $15. Camberwell Market, framed under glass. It's well worth being a spotter. What else? We all love Melbourne, and these are early prints of Melbourne by S.T. Gill, famous artist of the Gold Rush period, about 1854. Some of the scenes, I'll read this one. St Paul's Church from the south end of Swanston Street, Melbourne, in the 50s. Well, that church got pulled down, and they built another one. Then even the next one had no spires till the 1930 period, and it goes on the courthouses, Collins Street, etc. And they were $5 each framed. So I thought, I'd better get them. Because when you go to the Cartophilic Society, where I was a founder of that, one of the founders, those cards are worth about $30 each. And there's 6 there and 6 there, that's 12. 12 for $10 is not bad buying when they're $30 a card. But I'm not taking them out of the frame. It's just the way values go. So look, there'll be a little time for questions. Anybody got any answers? Yes, Roger.
Ian, what's your fascination with rocking horses? You've got about 50 of those.
Yes, well my dad had the shoe shop in the middle period, and Dad had a storeroom out in Abbotsford in what was an old toy shop. And Dad was selling so many shoes out of his one little shop in Collins Street, which is where Tiffany's are today, that he needed a warehouse, an off-site warehouse, and he bought this little business. And when it came to the freehold out near CUB, and when it came to the end, he let it out to the toy shop or something like that. I was small, and anyway, he was owed rent. The toy shop man couldn't pay the rent, but he had 2 rocking horses, which my dad took in lieu of rent, and we put them in our shoe shop. And it turned out to be very good because, you know, kids play up when they go shopping with Mum. We'd whack them on the rocking horse and they'd go for their lives. Mum would buy her shoes and we'd even fit them on the stirrups. And it turned out I got a bit of a love for these rocking horses, and I now have 65. Having bought one at Camberwell Market about 3 weeks ago. And they never come in complete and perfect. And I've got a big suitcase, and in it is spare stirrups, spare horsehair manes, there's little tacks and punches for the leather. Every time I see a leather strap I buy it, and everyone says, "What do you want that for? You're wasting your money." I said, no, that's a bridle, that's a crupper, that's something else for the rocking horse. And they all get used, and I'm really thrilled with them. I don't know what will happen to them in the end, but if any of you want one for your granddaughter or something, you better come and see me. But I'm not doing it for the money, it's just the love. Sir?
Then for people like yourself, how do you cope with the 2 following elements? Security
Yes?
and insurance.
Yes, very good question. I'm fighting 3 insurance companies at the moment to get a good rate, and they muck you around like you wouldn't believe. And then when you come to have a claim, there's a word called deny liability. I had Australia's largest coin robbery. It took 3-4 safes and many people and trucks, and it was all gone. Never saw them again. And we were double insured. My father had a place insured and I had it separately insured with the same company. The same company denied liability, and we fought them so hard we got a 10th ex gratia payment after a big fight. I'm not directly answering your question, but I have a bit of a beef with insurance companies. Let me just tell you, I had 3 1930 pennies. You'll know they're worth about 25,000 each. A 1929 one's only worth 5 cents, but a 1930's worth 25,000. 3 of them stolen. They gave me 1/10 of face value, so I got 0.3 of a cent for 3 1930 pennies, and you tell me if that's fair. No. I do insure, yes.
How do you establish the value that you want to?
Yes, well the thing is, I'm a cultural value for the nation, and yet I can't value my own things. And to some extent, I just let it go through to the keeper, because you need to employ someone like yourself yearly to value the things and update them and schedule them. Then I've got the worry that once you give a list out of where all the good stuff is and how much it's worth, some minion in the company goes, "Oh, I can tip for you, you know, go and get Armstrong." And I'm pretty sure that's how we lost our coins years ago. So how do you establish it? You need a professional valuer, really. And I'm not touting for work.
Security.
Security. Oh, yes, that was the other part of the question. Reasonable security. We've got all the things like cameras and alarms and back to bases and things. We have more than one location, and we keep a low profile. We have a warehouse with a mezzanine floor, but it just has a blank window, and all the others are, you know, car sanders and, you know, painters and gardeners and plumbers and things, and you don't expect to break into a place where some of my better stuff is stored. Sir?
when you transport yourself to the antique department in the Sky,
Yes.
what value will your sons and daughters get all of your stuff? Cost price or market value?
Yes, what value is the collection when you're not here? My family of 2 boys, 2 girls have no interest in the collection, which is extremely sad. At this stage, they may develop it. But mind you, they're rising 50, so what value? My wife says, look, you've put all this money into all these things and they're worthless. You know, it's a bit like the dining table that you bought in the 80s for $5,000. You go to sell it today and they offer you $500 for it. Well, a lot of my things are in that category and I have to wear that, but I'm not doing it for the money. I mean, the shoe buckle collection of approaching 3,000, it'd flood the market, the world market, let alone the Australian market. So I'd never get my money back, but the enjoyment of it is so great. I've waffled a bit, but what value? I think they would sell most of it, or I will make sure it's going to places where it would be a bit more appreciated. I am giving a lot of things to my old school, who were very good to me for 12 years and gave me a free education for the second half, Trinity Grammar and Kew, and they already have had 45 exhibitions of my things and are regularly calling on it. They've got icons at the moment. They're about to have Egyptian artefacts tomorrow, and I've just put car badges out for the motor racing, etc. It goes on and on.
How do you display these things to the
well,
public? Could we see them, or do you ever have open days at the warehouse? Or
Thank you for the question. How do you display the items? We're not set up at home like a museum. My wife likes to live in normal circumstances, and she does. She's banished me to a basement, and some of my treasures are there, and Roger's been around, but we don't encourage large groups because of our experience with the coins, unfortunately. That's put a damper on things. So our way of displaying is to lend things out, come out with things to a talk like this, number one. Number two, Trinity Grammar and other schools. Our granddaughter's just started at Melbourne Girls, and I'm going to offer the same to them. Any of the collection is available free. And the sporting museums and others have got some of our key items, no charge, and as long as they like. And they insure them. That will help answer this gentleman's question.
Ian, thank you very much. Now, I'm concerned. There's some shifty guys out there, and you've got some material out there.
Yes, good one.
So we need to work out what they were.
That's right.
Ian,
I would like them back, yes.
did you drive here today in your Bentley Tourer?
No, I went to the West Brighton Club the other night and raised a few eyebrows, but not here, no, because I'm carting this material. I'm just slightly illegally parked near to the front door. So sorry, no. But we do have a lot of fun in a Bentley, 1929 type Bentley, yes. Thanks for the question. Anyone been able to determine or have a guess at any of the mystery items? Sir, here at the front.
I'll have a go at it. I think it's a shoe scraper and a shoe brush.
Ah, that little ivory one.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, but no thank you. But you get a token for trying. Right, anybody else?
Yep, a can opener.
A can opener, oh, that little wine one. Yes, can opener. No, sorry. But you get one.
Oh, good, thank you.
There we are.
Come on, you guys are old enough to recognise them.
Cutting leather or leather gloves.
It's a real penny.
No, but if you could pass that one forward.
Is the little silver wheel
Yeah.
for cutting through a sugar store in a plantation?
That's a good try, but have another. Up the back.
A flint block. A flint block for striking.
That's very close, but no cigar for that one either.
Where is all that?
Yes, sir.
The little silver wheel, is that a plug of tobacco cutter?
once again very close. But if you'd like me to tell you, I shall.
Yeah.
The little leather covered item which has got a little bend in it, there we go, gentlemen, hold it up, yes. That ties in with my rocking horse collection, because in the olden days when these old rocking horses were around, ladies rode side saddle, and there was a little hole drilled in the rocking horse, and the young girl would ride side saddle on the rocking horse, and that's the peg for the side saddle. The Queen used to ride side saddle in the parades. And, she had so much gear on underneath you probably couldn't tell. Another one?
Here we go.
Yes. This one you thought was a flint, but it's not. Before the days of tractors, the Melbourne Cricket Ground used to be mown with the gang mowers pulled by horses. And the mowing blades would go blunt. And just inside here is a file, and this is a cast iron handle, and it would rub along the blades and sharpen them. Cast iron blade sharpener from the Melbourne Cricket Ground, sharpening the gang mower, right? Another one, the little winding one. Right, your wife has got a ring on, and her fingers have swollen with the arthritis and age has come on her, and it's her wedding ring. She said, oh, I can't get on with it, break my finger. Goes in to the jeweller, he drops the little thing down, puts the protector underneath inside the ring, winds the handle, and the ring cuts and you pull it off.
I knew that.
Yeah, everyone knows that. That goes in under the ring, and this little circular saw comes down, saws through the gold, and made in France. It's actually brass and quite desirable, little wooden handle. And that's what it is, a ring cutter offerer.
Worth how much? How much?
Oh, priceless. They're more valuable as sort of guess what it is things than the actual dollar value. And there's one more. There's one little one. And no further goes on this. We've had potato cutters and all sorts of things, but no.
A sugar cube.
No.
A sugar cube cutter.
It's come out of a travelling box, and it's for cleaning your comb. You get the oil in your hair and everything, and you run these little blades through the comb to loosen, and then you use the brushes to brush off the residue. And that's what it is, a little ivory comb cleaner. There we are. Well, got it back. The Charlotte medal is moving around. In fact, the story with that Charlotte, just to finish off, the National Museum, I hoped that they wouldn't want that frame, because I'd taken it to my framer in a little plastic bag, and I said, look, I'd like you to do the best framing job of your life. Don't mind double-sided calligraphy, whatever you need, and I'll pay whatever the price is. I want to be able to hang it either way, and everything. He said yes, and I went in, he said, there it is. I said, oh, marvellous. How much? He said, it's been such an honour to do it, there's no charge. And I was rather pleased with that. But when the museum said, no, we only want the medal, we'll let you keep the frame. And I thought, oh, marvellous. I had a copy made, which you're looking at now, so I can't claim it to be the original, but it looks just the same as the original did in there. So effectively, I've got the hundreds of thousands they paid me, and I've still got the medal. And the fun of it all.
Well, I'm sure you have. We've been on what a wonderful journey.
Yeah.
We just started from Frankston Shoemark, and then he took us back to the Coles picture book.
Silkworm had me a bit worried to start off with. Didn't know where we were going, but then, Ian, it's just amazing to listen to someone like you that has such a wide interest. I just wonder how you scratch all the dollars and cents to get. And
We
yes,
sold a few shoes.
must be good. But I'd like to say thank you very much for you coming with us today, and I'm not exactly sure if you got time enough to enjoy this, but it's a small token of our appreciation.
Thanks, Keith.
And I'm sure you're going to
Thank you
join
all.
us for lunch today, and we'll
Thank you
have
very
another
much.
chat.
And I, like a previous speaker, I shan't be leaving it behind.
Oh.